Hi, everyone, and welcome to the special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show and Author's Corner. As I guess Frank Fiore is cornering the books and book marketing because first he started a podcast on Western authors, and now he's taken over relaunching my Author's Corner from 13 years ago. Frank, how are you? I know you're excited about our guest. It's going to be really an interesting guest.
I'm doing well, Neil. And yes, this Dr. Housewright sounds like a very interesting guest, and we're going to find out more about him. Anyway, so welcome, Dr. Housewright. Now, can I ask you the first question? What are you a doctor of?
I am a doctor of education, educational leadership.
Oh, PhD doctor.
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, so we're in education leadership, and then we'll get right into the wrestling because I'm a former teacher. I have a master's degree in education, but that was after wrestling. I went back and retired from wrestling to be a teacher. And then I was an educational advocate, and I'm a tutoring business before, and I'm relaunching a tutoring business. But tell me more about the educational leadership real quick.
So I became a teacher 16 years ago. I've been in education for 16 years. I was a sports writer before that. My undergrad is journalism. Went back to school when the newspapers started to fold because of the internet boom, and decided to become an educator. So I coached and taught for 16 years. I was an assistant principal at School for the Blind for 2 years. And now I'm just kind of getting back into things and supervising study hall at a high school. So that gives me a chance to write and still, do my journalism stuff as well.
Oh, wow. So you kind of taking a sabbatical in education for a second? What would you call it?
I would say, after COVID, teaching became a little more difficult. And I was a middle school teacher, and I think I just kind of got burnt out on middle school kids. They're just a handful.
Oh, I know that because I taught middle school too. Yeah.
But I love high school. And so being a supervisor of study hall, I'm in the classroom every day with high school kids. I can help them out with whatever they need, but it also gives me a lot of time to write, which is where most of the book was written, was in a classroom while I was supervising study hall.
That's fantastic. All right. So Frank, go with the question. What about, I'm going to ask Frank Fiore. Was you ever a pro wrestling fan, Frank, growing up in New York?
No, I wasn't, but but I do want to ask Jeremy here, and I hope he doesn't get insulted, but the pro wrestling thing, sport, how much of that is real and how much of that is acting?
I would say it's choreographed. So what you see is planned out for the most part, but when they take shots with chairs and all that, that's real. And of course, I appreciate not using the word fake. I tell people we don't use the F word. That's something that
yeah, Frank, I'd have to stretch you if you did that, if you're in the ring with me, and I'd show you exactly, like, if somebody tries to say it's fake when I jump in the ring on Sunday, I can shoot wrestle on these people, these kids that are getting trained now. They think, hey, I'm getting the ring with you. And I ended up in a shoot match in Germany with somebody who literally wouldn't sell for me, that was half the size of me, and I had to take him out and pretty much beat him up in the ring. So yeah, so the word fake's not, yes, choreographed and fixed. Yes.
Scripted is a good one.
Yes, scripted's a good one too. I think that the business has changed in so many ways. So tell us the name of the book really quickly. Show us it. Do you have the cover? No, I want to see it.
Yeah, I actually have one right here.
Love the show.
For the Love of the Show, Pro Wrestling Fans Tell Their Stories is the name of the book.
Right. And yeah. And so why did you write it? Because how many years you've been a fan forever? And why did you write it? What made you say, this is the book I'm going to write?
So I've been wanting to write a book for a long, long time. And after I wrote my dissertation for my doctorate, which was 100 pages, I thought, you know what? I've already pounded out this thing, which was boring and miserable to go through. Why not do something that I enjoy? And it was either write about the Kansas City Chiefs, because they're my favorite football team, or pro wrestling. So I'm fortunate enough to be able to shoot photos for a lot of WWE events here in St. Louis, and even I've went to Las Vegas and New York to shoot shows. And in doing that and traveling to WrestleManias and such, I met a bunch of fans who I've become friends with, a select group of people, and we meet up a couple times a year at different shows. And we've just created this bond. We message each other every day about wrestling and talk about different things. And then once or twice a year, we get together at a WrestleMania or a SummerSlam and hang out. And I thought, that's a pretty cool story that I've met these really cool people, a couple guys from California, a couple guys from Canada. If I've met these people, there's got to be other people out there with really cool stories about how wrestling has affected them. And so I just started kind of putting the word out and searching and, going on the internet and posting. I was looking for people with stories, and I found 6 different individuals with really cool stories that appealed to me.
Who were the 6 that you highlighted?
So the first guy I talked to was a gentleman named Justin Deming, who is originally from St. Louis, but now I believe he lives in Connecticut. He was a huge fan of pro wrestling, so much so that he decided to get an actual replica title belt tattoo around his waist that took 2.5 years. So I talked to him about that. I told that story. The second guy I talked to was a gentleman named Kyle Scarborough, who's a tattoo artist from Washington, Missouri, and he actually befriended Bray Wyatt from WWE, and he actually drew up the concept for a mask that Bray Wyatt debuted a few years back as The Fiend. Became probably the best-selling merch that WWE had that year. And while I was writing this, Bray Wyatt passed away, which kind of changed the story a little bit, and it was something that I really had to add to it. So then I interviewed another gentleman named Kurt Gannon, who is a indie pro wrestler from Kansas City, and just told his story about being a fan and trying to make it into a bigger organization. He was on the cusp of getting signed by NWA and then tore a tendon in his shoulder. So he's basically starting over from scratch right now. And so I told his story. And then I also talked to a young man named Derek Baker, who has a following of 3 million people on social media.
Wow.
He runs his sister runs Baker Banter, and Derek is a 26-year-old guy with Down syndrome, and he is just the biggest wrestling fan I've ever met in my life. He goes backstage and meets all the wrestlers. He travels to all the shows with his family, and he's become kind of a spokesperson for individuals with handicap issues. And it's just a great story to tell. Another individual in the book was Izzy Moreno. She's a young girl from Florida, and I first came across Izzy listening to a show called Busted Open on Sirius Radio. And Izzy would call in at 10 years old, 12 years old, and have more knowledge of pro wrestling than most people. And she actually got involved in a actual WWE storyline when she was 8 years old on a brand called NXT. And she was involved with some wrestlers named Bayley and Sasha Banks. And, Izzy wanted to be a pro wrestler. And now at the age of 16, she has realized that dream, and she has wrestled, I think, in 3 or 4 pro matches. So, I told their stories, and I'm just checking that I didn't leave anybody out here.
I guess they got to buy the book to do that.
Right.
So I mean,
Yeah.
I just it's just so great to show the love of pro wrestling. So, what do you like the old days of pro? I mean, I know you're a little younger than I am. Do you like the old days of pro wrestling better than what's today? Like, I see a lot of moves and no storylines anymore as much, meaning in the ring. There's storylines outside the ring, but there's not really a story told in the ring anymore. It's a lot of big moves, and it's weird. I'm gonna probably be thinking about that when I step in the ring for a training Sunday, just to work with some of these guys that they don't know how to tell a story. What do
Right.
you think's happened? Why do you think that it doesn't work? What do you think it's more about the death-defying feats, or do you think it's more about people's mic work in the business? And what do you like about the old days compared to the new?
That's a great question, and I find myself torn. Personally, I am a huge fan of storylines. I am a huge fan of getting the audience involved and kind of getting them hooked to where they want to. You have to get them hooked so they'll tune in every week. And the WWE is fantastic at doing that. They have come up with some storylines over the last 3 years, mainly one called involving a group called the Bloodline, with Roman Reigns and the Usos. And they've taken that storyline and drug it out for 3 years, and it's went in so many different directions, but yet it comes back to your central character, who is Roman Reigns, the champion, who's held the belt now for 3 years, which is a rare thing in the business today. I mean, you talk about old school wrestling. Back in the day, you had, Hulk Hogan, who held it for 3.5, 4 years. And before him, Ric Flair held titles for a long time. Bruno Sammartino, who I had a chance to meet years ago at an airport. Wonderful man. He's missed to this day, but that's a guy who sold out Madison Square Garden every time he wrestled there, which is a feat no one has achieved and probably never will. So I think, and then you look at an organization like AEW. I have issues with them. I try to watch them, but their storytelling is very sparse. And when you talk about the high-flying, death-defying moves, a lot of wrestlers today want to do that. And it's great to watch. It's great to see. But then I hearken back to, what's the point in doing it? Why are you going to put yourself through a table going off a steel cage if you're not gaining anything from it, but getting that wow factor from the audience?
See, and Mick Foley did it in a story. It made sense. He's wrestling The Undertaker and doing it, and it's a Hell in a Cell against one of the most dangerous men in the world at that time. It made sense. None of the stuff makes sense. Go ahead, Frank. So now I want you to go ahead, Frank, with some couple more questions for Jeremy.
What do you think draws people to pro wrestling? Obviously the action, the competition, the fight, but there must be something else. What's in such a personality that why do they want to watch the pro wrestling? Why would they want to do that?
I get asked that a lot because my wife can't stand it, and she'll tell me, you have a doctorate in education, you're very intelligent, why are you watching this crap? And I say, it's a soap opera. It's a male soap opera. But now you go to shows, there's as many females in the audience as males. I think it's just you're looking at guys who are the greatest athletes in the world. And people kind of scoff when I say that, but I'll put any athlete that wrestles in the WWE up against an NFL, NBA, or MLB or hockey player, and I bet that wrestler is a better athlete with the things they can do. And, it's something that people are drawn to because they're like real life superheroes. People love to talk about Superman and Batman. Well, you have a guy like Hulk Hogan, who was my guy growing up. He was a superhero for kids. Train, say your prayers, eat your vitamins. It gave us a hero to look up to. Yes. And I think in today's age, people are looking for an out as well, a couple hours a night where they can just forget their bills, forget their problems at work, forget the problems they may have at home, sit in front of the television and invest themselves in this story that, some of them are very ridiculous. I give it that. And there's times when I'll turn the channel because I'm like, I can't watch this. This is like for 5-year-olds. But there's a little something for everybody.
Totally.
If you like great stories, there's something for you. If you like high flying action, there's something for you. If you like love stories, there's some of that for you. So there's a little something that attracts everybody.
And the thing I don't understand is what happened to the guys that look like superheroes. I mean, the bigger guys are, and maybe it's potentially because the business is so pushed to do so many more death-defying feats, and you have to be so athletic now. But I think that the missing component of guys that when you walk into let's say a bar, or you walk in, they look like a wrestler. I'm a legitimate 6'10", I'm 280. When I was a wrestler, I was 310, 315 pounds. And I had long hair, and I look the part of a wrestler, right? And I will look the part of the wrestler in my comeback. But ultimately, I don't need to be the size I needed to be anymore because the business isn't like that. Yeah, there's some guys really big, but not many.
Right.
You think that kind of deludes that now somebody in the crowd could be a superstar? I don't know. I think that goes back to maybe how we're seeing superheroes today are
Well,
not as
Mhm.
they're breakable. What are you thinking of the reason of this whole? Let me give you an example. Um, even CM Punk, what he looked like before to what he ended up looking before, and
huge fan.
he took it based on his mic work. If his mic work wasn't as that good, he's not getting pushed that way because he doesn't look larger than life than some of these other stars. Now, I'll talk about specifically somebody like Orange Cassidy or some. None of these guys would have got pushed 20 years ago. They would have got crushed in the ring by someone like me. Is that a good thing for this business, or do you think we need to go back again
I
to
think it's
some
a
of these
great
larger
thing.
than life people again?
I think it's a great thing because, and I can tell you a couple reasons why. When I was in New York for WrestleMania 35 and Kofi Kingston won the title, a friend of mine was in tears. And I looked at him and I said, "Why are you crying?" And he goes, "Finally, somebody who looks like me has won the heavyweight title." And at first I'm like, okay, whatever. Well, years later, when Bray Wyatt got popular, I was a huge fan because here's a guy that's overweight. He's got a gut. He looks like a normal guy, but yet he is one of the most popular wrestlers in the company. And he looked like me. I could identify with him. And I think that's what's great about bringing these, I don't want to say normal looking guys, but, guys that you would maybe see on the street, like a Bryan Danielson, normal size guy, 6 foot, 190
But I think
pounds.
you have to have a mix, and I think we're running
Yeah.
away from the larger than life some of these other guys, and we're looking at their work versus wow. Could you imagine how John Wick was able to beat up that 7'5" guy that from the Dallas Mavericks? Yeah, that
Mhm.
made sense because he's that dominant, but you can't really make it like a movie. So that's the point. I don't know if story or storylines, and probably is an easier way to work now than
Yeah.
when I worked, because guess what? I would get the bushwhackers to say, "You don't take a bump from this guy. You don't take a bump from this guy. It's got to look real." Now all these guys are taking bumps from small guys. So go
Yeah.
figure how stories and life goes. Frank, any other questions? This is just intriguing for sure before we have to let him go.
Yeah, I mean, it is very intriguing, and I learned a lot about pro wrestling. Uh, what about where does strength come in? Is it all strength, or is there other things in being becoming a pro wrestler?
Oh, I think, in today's in today's wrestling, you have to have not only strength but agility, flexibility, and I think there's a lot of mental preparedness. You need to be mentally tough as well, because the grind of the travel and dealing with the fans and putting yourself over, there's a lot of guys who will stay in character 24/7. I mean, look at a guy like The Undertaker, who for years nobody would see him anywhere out of character. Now today you'll see him he'll go to football games, he'll go to basketball games, and now he just goes by Mark Calloway, and he's like a normal guy. But and same with Hulk Hogan. It's sometimes, and I think today it's still even hard sometimes when you see Hulk out. It's hard to decipher. Are you watching Terry Bollea or are you talking to Hulk Hogan? And I think he sometimes forgets
Yeah,
which he is, if
totally.
he's playing a character, if he's playing
Okay.
himself. So yeah, I think there's a lot that goes into it, not just being muscular, because there's a lot of wrestlers who, like the Miz, who's a great wrestler. He's going to be a Hall of Famer when his career's done, but he's entertaining. You have to be able to act. You have to be
It's a
able to
mix.
entertain the
Yeah.
fan. Yeah, it's got to be a good mix.
And I think so. Where's the best place people can buy your book and learn more about you? Where can they go?
So the best place people can find the book is on Amazon. I also have it on barnesandnoble.com, but right now I'm running a sale on it on Amazon. So that's the best place to get it.
All right. I appreciate it. Thanks again, Jeremy.
Thank you very
All
much.
right. That was a special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show and the Author's Corner, guys. Take care.